Hi, everybody. My name is Zachary Hertz, and I'm really sorry I couldn't make it today. I'm working in Southern California, and so I just wanted to record a little introductory lecture to make sure that you have some idea of how this class is going. So, we're going to talk a little about the main issues of the course, about some of what my goals are, and some of the issues that are inherent in a class that's going to be reading some pretty sensitive material and talking about some pretty uncomfortable topics. I just want to make sure that you know what you're getting into in this class. All right? So let's begin. In the ancient world, people owned people. Now, to be clear, that's not only an ancient phenomenon. Georgetown has recently been coming to grips with its own complicity in the ownership and sale of people in the antebellum period. Georgetown's Slavery, Memory, and Reconciliation Project, as well as the activism of the GU 272 descendants, has sparked real debate in America and on this campus about how an institution founded on the values of Cura Personalis could treat people so callously. I think, as a classicist, that it's a good idea at this moment for us to look at these problems in the ancient world as well. How enslaved people experienced the cultures in which they lived, how those cultures experienced and talked about enslaved people, and the way that our records privilege the latter while really erasing or minimizing the former. Now, this class will address all three problems, and they're really very separate problems. So, let's start with the first. Greek and Roman cities were home to enormous numbers of people without any legal rights or autonomy, people who could be bought, sold, and exploited like objects. These people were taken from other cultures, both within and without the Mediterranean, and integrated into a hostile society on contingent and horribly abusive terms. They were subject to horrific physical violence at the hands of their owners, as well as legal systems designed around that violence and with the explicit aim of preserving it. In some cases, albeit not many, we have firsthand records of how these people interacted with each other and their world. This class will be a space for us to talk about those experiences and how they should inform our understanding, of Greek and Roman social history. Now, in many more cases, we see enslaved people through their enslavers' eyes. Greek and Latin literature is full of enslaved people living on the margins and tangential to the actions that those texts intend to commemorate. Drama includes slaves as helpers and plot devices. Technical literature advises the successful farmer on how to manage the human beings under their control. We're going to read those texts not only with an eye towards what they might tell us about how enslaved people lived in reality, but also the role or function of the slave in Greek and Roman imagination. How Greeks and Romans discussed these people, how they integrated the enslaved into their own worldview, and how they reconciled the basic tension between acknowledging another person's humanity, as both societies did in their discussions of enslavement, and also treating that person as a thing. But finally, and perhaps most importantly, we're going to discuss the biases in our sources for the ancient world. The Greek and Latin literary tradition is often discussed as a record of men, a record of the wealthy, a record of the literate. It is also a record of the free. Enormous swaths of Greek and Roman experience are excluded by our textual tradition. And while the experiences of the enslaved are only a part of that, it is a particularly potent tool we can use to think through classics and ancient history as disciplines. We will try to approach all of these problems throughout the course, thinking about what enslaved people's lives were like, what enslavers thought about those lives, and what it means that we have to use such different evidence for each. Each of these problems exists in tension with the other. They must all be dealt with together, and I really want us to use this class to think through these problems as part of a broader network or a broader issue in my chosen field, which is ancient history. So that's my primary goal for this course. We're going to be thinking about problems of labor, problems of violence, and really problems of methodology. And doing this properly is going to require some fairly straightforward ground rules. Now, I just want to make sure we're clear on what this class is going to look like. That's another part of today's lecture. The class will be a mixture of lecture and discussion. Obviously, not today. Personally, I'd much rather hear you talk than ramble at you, but I also recognize that this is a class for non-specialists, and it really is sometimes just efficient for me to explain things in a lecture-y way, even if that's never the point. Now, normally, I cold call. People who have taken other classes with me know this. I just make people talk. I don't think that's a great idea given the material we'll be discussing in this class, so I won't be doing that. What I will be doing is grading on participation and taking that pretty seriously. So I really need all of you to talk. You're going to need to do the readings every day, and you're going to need to have thoughts about them. Now, about that reading, we'll be looking mostly at ancient material with some modern stuff being added in as I also get a feel for what's going to work best in the class. And I want to be clear about what this reading is going to be like. A lot of the reading in this class might be very upsetting, but I still expect you to do it, and I think it's only fair that I explain to you why that is. Frankly, the sorts of processes that we talk about in this class are going to be processes that people often euphemize. We tend to make this part of the ancient world look a lot less violent or less brutal than it is, and that leaves us with really wrong ideas about the past, wrong ideas that have justified really bad practices over the years. I think it's important to look this material in the face, and that's going to mean reading some kind of gritty stuff. Now, just a quick note, I don't provide trigger warnings ex ante. My understanding is that people with PTS triggers rarely have the same ones or ones that are predictable in advance. So I can't really tell what you might need accommodation on. That said, if you suffer from post-traumatic stress and you need to avoid certain material for your safety, you need to talk to the Academic Resource Center. That's a disability. I treat it as such. I am happy to accommodate it. And if ARC tells me that you shouldn't be reading material that covers a certain kind of problem or a certain sort of action, yeah, that is perfectly fine. We'll cross that bridge if we get to it. There is a slightly different issue, though, which I want to think about a little bit differently. I personally call this like a heads up in my other classes. Some of the readings for this class have made me cry. Some have made me want to vomit, just in my own preparation for this. I still thought it was important for me to read them as a historian, but I was really glad that I was reading them in an office so that I could shut the door and feel what I was feeling in private. I want you all to have that same opportunity, even though I know a lot of you do most of your reading in public. When I ask you to read things that are really troubling, I'll let you know, and I'm going to say briefly what the issue might be. If it's something you would rather read in your room than in Lao or in a coffee shop, please read it in private. That said, I really badly want us all to be doing the reading together if possible. When people don't read the things that upset them, the only people who read that material are the ones who don't find it upsetting. And I would rather, personally, that they not be the ones who get to decide what this field looks like. Also, I just want to acknowledge in advance, I don't have any family history of enslavement. All white here, Ashkenazi Jewish. If you have any experiences with enslavement in your family, you should feel free or welcome to bring that in. The fact that relatively few descendants of the enslaved are in classics is a problem in the field. It helps distort the field and something that we're actively working to change. But you're also not obligated. I just want to make sure this class is very comfortable, or at least as comfortable as possible, because there are parts of it that are just going to be rough. We're all going to really need to be kind to each other this semester. Now, logistics. You're going to be tested with a midterm and with 2 papers. This is less to get down the names and dates of every phenomenon we talk about, and more just to make sure that you're familiar with the broad concepts of the class and that you can think through some of its problems. If you have any disabilities or require accommodation, I'm happy to work with you on that. But you should know, you have strong privacy rights under FERPA that make it illegal for me to ask you questions about your medical history. So the best way to get an accommodation is to go to the Academic Resource Center and to let them tell me what you need. I'm happy to comply with anything ARC tells me, no questions asked. And finally, I just want to make sure that you know how to get in touch with me. I'm available at Z as in zebra, H149 at georgetown.edu. That's true even now, by the way. And I will be holding my office hours once I'm back in 318 Keeley Hall. I really look forward to meeting you, and I'll see you Monday.